If you're an HVAC technician and a call comes in, Grainger knows that you need a partner that helps you find the right product, fast and hassle-free. And you know that when the first problem of the day is a clanking blower motor, there's no need to break a sweat. With Grainger's easy-to-use website and product details, you're confident you'll soon have everything humming right along. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
How are the angles looking?
Fine, totally fine. Same as before.
I can tell it's part 2 because I've taken my hat off.
Totally. We way bit of continuity change there, do you know what I mean? Like,
but we did say we were taking a break.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey folks, it's Unsung. We're still talking about Green Day.
Yay!
My name's Mark.
2026, by this point it's probably August.
It's less of a day and more of an eon.
The best thing about this recording has been not talking about Green Day before we started recording.
That interlude was the happiest 20 minutes of my life, like just not having to talk about Green Day for 20
because
minutes.
never in the bad part. The bad part. So
Rick, obviously,
yes,
Rick.
Here for his annual start of the year.
Annual, like, who's that guy? We can only put up with him once a year.
It's like a colonoscopy, but worse.
Yeah, oh, thanks.
So Rick was here last year and he did Black Sabbath. Was Black Sabbath as difficult as Green Day?
That's a great question, by the way. Oof.
No.
Because their latter career is a tough listen.
But I was
hard.
I was constantly keeping up with it.
Okay, so you didn't have that like absence and then...
No, I didn't have an absence. So I know when Forbidden was released, I suppose, like, when I started listening, 1988. So it was all, the good stuff had happened.
It's Tony Martin.
It's Tony Martin. So I remember like Headless Cross coming out and Tear and all that stuff. So that, I was there for all of that.
That's kind of unfortunate, to be honest.
But like, we were talking about this in the break, we were talking about American Idiot aside maybe, but from everything American Idiot onwards is what I would refer to as a car album. And it's like the same reason, and like it's the same reason, like I'll buy Death Magnetic and Instant Anger and Hardwired to Self-Destruct because I love Metallica when I was young. Oh, Metallica's got a new album out. Oh, bang it in the car.
CDs in the car. Right?
But there's someday, we talked about this before, like when we talked about, like, I think we put a gig at the Mansfield and there was a fight outside and like we had this thing like somebody's going to remember that for the rest of their life. I went to this mad gig and there was a fight outside and we're part of that, and it might have been we weren't great things, but sorry, I'll get to the point. Somebody out there, like, DOS is their favourite Green Day album.
So
that is the interesting.
No. Wait a minute.
But it's the first one. It's the first, like, oh, you like that punk music? It's the one your dad got you for your 13th birthday, or
Mark, by example, you'll relate to this. When Weaver picked Catch 33 for Meshuggah, it was so obviously that kind of discovery bias of like when a band comes into your life. We've talked about it. The introductory album, you're so heavily biased towards it that it's very hard to be objective about the other aspects of their catalogue. And I think Rick's right. I mean, if DOS is the thing that you associate with your first winch or your first, whatever, your first tour, your first whatever, great memories, yeah, I get that you don't like it as a record. I get that.
I'm not. That's not my. It's not my objection.
You do grow to appreciate the canon, especially Dookies and American Idiots, but you will have this permanent. I mean, so Grey Race is the one with Bad Religion, right? It's, to me, I mean, we talked about this in the Bad Religion episode, I realise that it's not their best album, but it's the one that is the biggest emotional weight for me when I hear it.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at, but the reason I disagree, right, is because I think probably from...
By the way, what an What a terribly undisciplined intro to a show this is. We haven't even...
We're in it.
People don't even know what this podcast's called at this point.
I said it was
a Green Day
I did say
podcast.
Unsung to begin with. But
Unsung Podcast. If you want to subscribe, Unsung Pod, Patreon/Unsung Pod.
Yep. Patreon.com,
Minimal amount. You'll get the bonus episodes. You'll get all the shite. You'll get invited onto meta platforms, and you'll get to abuse us personally.
good stuff.
And we're legally obliged to answer even the most offensive messages.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, you were saying.
So, just to end your little sort of intro there, this episode and the last episode we're talking about Green Day.
Green Day, the
obviously.
most unsung band we could think of.
And we're kind of circling around Insomniac as being their unsung record, right?
Yes.
But we're not talking about that record. Well, at the end of this episode, we'll talk about that record. But what we're going to talk about now is probably the doldrums of their career, right? So the point...
Well, not for that. This is their superstardom.
Okay. Musically, perhaps, it is the doldrums, but like commercially, evidently not.
The opposite.
But the reason I take issue with you saying that DOS could be someone's best album is that trilogy of records, and pretty much from that period until now, they are not making new fans. I'm totally convinced they're making no new fans whatsoever. They're just drawing people who are getting older, making more money. They can just fucking shovel massive show tickets, huge prices at them. I don't like...
So you think all of those sales are existing audience?
Yes, but I think there's maybe a slight exception to that, because if you look at the streams for some of the songs on Saviours, the new record, they far eclipse anything since
I do
21st Century
agree.
Breakdown.
Okay, but we're obviously going to get into the weeds of that.
But I think I take issue with the fact that
you think they've literally hit that ceiling of audience.
They're a legacy act. You know.
What does their crowd look like? Define that. Sorry to interrupt you. If they're a legacy act, does everybody go to see them my age?
I would probably wager
I would say not.
I think, well, maybe there'll be people who will bring their kids whose kids like it.
So there you go. Then you're saying no one, like, so there's their new audience.
But their dad's not going to go listen to DOS, no, they're going to go listen to Dookie.
I know, but but they'll buy them that one.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
We jumped straight into the deep end of this.
So did.
But I think there is. I think maybe it's just the way that music is perhaps consumed now. Will be changed. So you're not buying DOS, you're listening to it on your phone.
Listening to a song?
Right.
Yeah, aye.
I put my hand up there. That didn't work.
Please
right,
go.
clearly that entire fucking thing, that ritual is now completely redundant.
Let's adhere to that,
I'm just going to wade in. An interesting recent example of something that flies in the face of what you're saying is Deftones. So I thought Deftones had peaked with Around the Fur.
I didn't know anybody still liked that.
Or White Pony, that kind of era. You think, right, wow, that is stardom, right? That is Deftones hitting stardom. And then recently, Deftones have gone to superstardom with
TikTok.
To the point where like their next tour is 40,000 capacity venues. Which is 10 times the capacity of places they were playing prior.
More than double the capacity of the venues are playing this month.
Right. So my point is just that the audience that is attending that is different. And so I think there is still growth potential. Maybe stuff that we're unaware of, but there is still growth potential in that. And
I think potential is right. I think potential is correct. And the numbers for Saviour kind of do indicate there is something like that.
There's something like that.
I just...
Right, the
Deftones are quite sexy. Green Day are not.
I think what happened is
Green Day's not sexy.
No, I think in your heart you want to believe that people out there have got better music taste, and they didn't. After a warning, they're like, I don't want to consume this anymore. You're holding out that strong belief that like people have still got some good in them,
it's
Johnny.
It's also the lack of album thing as well. The album thing as well. It's not a thing that really young folk are listening to.
You're younger than me, and I'm younger than Rick. That'll get beaten out you soon.
Hello.
I think Green Day, they don't play songs from that record. Like, we're getting into this. We shouldn't be getting into this.
The cart is firmly before the horse at the moment.
Let's take a step.
We are on the eve of American Idiot.
Yes, let's take a step back.
We introduced Green Day in part one. We spoke about their early years. We spoke about what we thought and what I'm sure they thought was probably their peak in Dookie. We're obviously going to talk about Insomniac. That's the focus of this, that we think it's a little bit unsung. We spoke about Nimrod, which I think is underrated as an album. It's seen as being a little bit all over the map.
Never sentimental argument.
I actually don't think it is in hindsight. I think, as we spoke about at length as well, Warning is a little bit peely-wally, it's a little bit overproduced, and I felt personally they were chasing another single.
Desolation road where I'm a castaway, going at it alone, castaway, now I'm on my own, castaway, going at it alone.
You guys didn't agree, but that's okay. But we are now on the brink of what is going to become a fucking touring musical in American Idiot, right? 2004.
Don't wanna be an American idiot. Don't want a nation.
It peaks at number 1, which we mentioned hasn't happened to this point because Dookie, for all its success, only got to number 2. The sales, it says 23 million worldwide. I believe Dookie still has overall sales that are in excess of that. I think this is the right album at the right time to hit the second crest of pop punk. So if you imagine them as a surfer, it's like, yeah, they've gone up one, they've got unexpectedly high, they've come back down, but the timing has been such that they've come back up on a wave. And you know, ironically as well, like the thing is, the wave was largely of their creation because that wave that they rode in 2004 of like Sum 41 and Newfound Glory and all these kind of bands, they were the inspiration.
Yeah, we spoke about that in the last episode.
A huge part of that, especially Blink 182. Yeah. So they ride it to a height that is well beyond the height of Dookie, and I think it must have surprised even them. And American Idiot becomes a phenomenon. You've got obviously American Idiot the track, you've got Boulevard of Broken Dreams the track, Holiday, Wake Me Up When September Ends with that big kind of like ballad thing that we spoke about, you know.
Ring out the bells again, like we did when spring began. Wake me up when September ends.
They'd obviously found they could make some hay with that. The album has something that a lot of their best albums or most successful albums have, which is a massive trio of opening tunes, really, really big opening tunes. They realised that having one of these songs on their albums, whether it was Time of Your Life or whatever, that diversified from the upbeat, frantic thing really helped as well, because people did get a little bit fatigued by the pace and the nature of their songs. So I think Wake Me Up When September Ends does them a lot of favours in this album. And yeah, and the critical reception of this album was overwhelming acclaim. Warning was a little bit lukewarm. Nimrod even was a little bit but it was okay. It was positive, but not effervescent. At this point, they're getting praised for their ambition, which is like Green Day are back and they want to make a big mark. They've released this album of huge individual songs. There's narrative cohesion, which, you know, is why it lends itself to a musical, but they got quite political, but political in quite a, I'm going to use the word asinine. That's a harder word than I mean it to be, because I think there is something sincere about it, but I want to revisit that in a bit more depth later on, right? But they start to reference political situations. It's the early 2000s, you know, post-2003 Iraq invasion. George Bush is easy money as an object of mockery and things like that. So they lean right into that. I mean, I noticed when I was researching this, it was widely considered Green Day's artistic peak.
Yeah, I said in the last episode that it's considered their magnum opus, and I think it will be. For me, it runs Dookie the closest of close seconds. It is just as unskippable as Dookie for me, honestly. And I'm not a big Green Day fan. I never have been a big Green Day fan. I remember the record coming out. I remember it being huge. I remember Chris, you and I and Weaver spoke about this in a group chat. My Chemical Romance don't become so big if this record doesn't exist, right? It happens in the same label and they're like 6 months later, you know. This sets off like a third generation, I guess, of pop punk, which is like vastly different from the one that they started in the second generation, or I guess arguably the first generation, I suppose. And it just creates this groundswell of momentum for them that basically makes them one of the biggest bands in the world. And they still are to this day. Yeah. And it is a remarkable thing. It's just the record is great. I think it's brilliant, honestly. But
they become our arena band.
Yeah, they become
our generation. I mean,
stadium band.
What was Guns N' Roses would have been the previous one, right?
I would say so. Like me, used to talk about this. You were never a fan. You don't understand how big Guns N' Roses were. Like Guns N' Roses are like 6 o'clock news big.
Yeah.
So when a band who's like a metal band, like Metallica aren't 6 o'clock news band. Guns N' Roses are a 6 o'clock news. So maybe in America, maybe not so much here, but in America, Green Day are your 6 o'clock news band. If Billy Joe fell down the stairs tonight on Fox News, Billy Joe falls down the stairs.
Yeah.
They've transcended. They've become
A beautiful way, yeah.
but like, you know, they're in the Sun, they're in the Daily Record, you know. Nobody's giving a shit if Ben Weasel falls down the stairs, you know.
Yeah.
He's Screeching Weasel. Ben Weasel falls downstairs. Who?
By the way, it's so weird though, because unlike Axl Rose or Slash or whatever, like Billy Joe Armstrong is just so not like that guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this the thing. Like,
He's not in the rock star tradition of let them eat cake and
exactly.
He's still a punk at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like he still has that.
It's
that
so
vibe.
bizarre. I mean, yeah. I mean, the thing is, right, when you go back to Dookie, and this will become really apparent when we dig into Insomniac a bit more, the level of success and celebrity and pressure was clearly a big shock to their system. I mean, the thing is, when this comes out, I don't have any inside information, but it seems like less of a shock to the system. Like, they seem more adjusted. Maybe they're older. Maybe it was a bit more deliberate. Like, the Dookie success, I think, was completely unexpected. But
Yeah, I mean-
this success is maybe like something they were more hoping might land.
Yes, maybe. I think I agree. I kind of agree and disagree. I don't think they ever expected to be as big as American Idiot got them. I don't think that was ever the goal, right, with Dookie. But they never really got any smaller after Dookie in terms of the arenas, because they were an arena band, so they were playing
you're right.
huge
Like
rooms.
the
so,
gigs they were playing were just as big, but their sales were massively down.
Totally. So when this happens,
That means you're living on borrowed time, though,
Yeah.
right? Because see, if you're one of those bands that, yes, you're still playing huge shows, but you haven't had an album that's even close to the 25 plus million, you know, you're getting down to like 1 million. You are living on borrowed time. Like those levels of shows aren't going to last forever.
Yeah.
don't know, like Metallica.
Really?
Yep, Metallica have not. Nothing's probably sold as big as the Black Album.
yeah.
They're
I
still
suppose.
coming to play Hampden.
But I guess the
They
Black...
could, that thing, they could turn up in a field with a generator and 100,000 people will turn up.
Aye. Yeah, that's a good point. The transitional period in here is like, it's obviously 100, like it probably is like it's tens of thousands, if not maybe hundreds of thousands, given some of the festivals I guess they would have played, right? But they're primed for it, right? They're not a small band anymore, so they kind of know how to handle themselves and how to handle it. And
they probably have a much bigger infrastructure around them.
absolutely.
Because when they got big with Dookie, they probably had a manager, maybe like a couple of people that were sort of assistants. Now they probably have a team of like dozens and dozens of people.
There's probably there's no shock that a lot of the side projects have got people that are part of their crew in them. That's kind of really punk rock in a way. It's like sort of spreading the wealth a wee bit.
Yeah. I think
that's distinctly them, though. You know,
I think the thing with the gigs as well, though, it's like nobody's buying their new album, but there's people still going to see them. But where was it they played the last time they played here?
Like Houston Park.
Houston. They're not.
Is that not the one they almost played?
No, they played it again.
Played it
last year.
again.
Played
And
it
like,
again.
you know,
2024.
Offspring toured, they played the Hydro.
I was at that.
Yeah, like they've not went back down to the venues I saw them in. They're still playing these big venues because people still want to go and see them. So there is still an element of, I mean, that's like kind of like the Metallica thing. It's people who maybe go to one gig a year. Oh, Green Day are coming. Oh, I used to like them. We'll take the Waynes.
Yeah,
That's totally it.
It's that kind of.
I have to say though, I don't think directly comparable to maybe 20 odd years ago, because we are in the era of nostalgia. We're in the era of like an aging population who now have disposable income, are massively invested in legacy bands. That didn't exist. I mean, I think in the 90s and very early 2000s, there was still more of a rolling sense of like, what's the next big thing? Whereas now there is more of a sense of like, these bands that are big are now big forever, because legacy touring and going to see a bunch of old guys shamble around the stage is much more the done thing now.
Thanks.
Actually,
I tried not to look at you there, mate. But
Thanks,
honestly,
well done. Thanks.
that's a good point. Bands like Metallica and Green Day no doubt know their legacy acts to a degree, but they're still acting like they're not.
Yeah.
They're still like chucking out records.
That's where the naivety comes in, right? It's like, how good are your records? And that's, I guess, what we're about to talk about.
I think so. For Metallica, like they're kind of the same as they're kind of at this point. They're kind of the same as Green Day.
They're the heavy metal Green Day.
There's no bad songs. There's maybe not good songs either, but there's no bad songs, right? So
But is that not the same thing? Like, are like not good songs, once you get to that point of just churning out the same filler, like the same landfill, it does become bad by virtue of not being good.
I like Weezer, so no.
Yeah, okay. There's a great example. You know what I mean?
It's maybe one of the only things, I suppose, music is being consistent is seen as being bad.
Yeah.
Because you're not expecting everyone to be better than the last. If Metallica are consistent, they'll do a record. it'll consistently be too long, and there'll be good songs in it, and I'll buy it, and I'll go, because in my head James Hetfield's still 22 and he's playing Day and the Green.
In 2006, American Idiot begins its transition into a Broadway musical, right? It didn't premiere until 2009, but it did end up earning a Tony Award, which is hot shit in the world of musicals, and the band members occasionally would appear on the show.
Billy Joe plays St. Jimmy in 76 performances. So like he was a part of that show for a long time.
But I mean, it did a lot more than 76.
I know, but like it's not insubstantial for a guy that's a touring rock star. You know what I mean?
And then a number of years go by, 5 years as it happens, and we get to 21st Century Breakdown in 2009. And again, this is the weird thing, chart peak #1, right? Bearing in mind that Dookie did not get to #1, 21st Century Breakdown gets to #1 comfortably. To be fair, the sales are 4 million worldwide, but we've spoken about this in the podcast before. 2003, 2004 was a watershed for record sales.
They collapsed.
They absolutely go off a cliff. People get into streaming. Broadband is rolled out. People can suddenly stream MP3s and stuff very easily. Streaming sites start to come online. So the fact that it sells 4 million is still actually really
that is enormous in that era. That is enormous.
Yeah.
Actually, can we just roll back for a wee second?
Oh, of course.
Sorry. So, in chronological order, in between American Idiot and Warning, there is a network. Have you heard the network?
Oh, it's just the other project.
Yeah, so it's New Wave. It's a New Wave band. It sounds like Devo.
All right.
It's actually, it's pretty good. Like, if you like that kind of new everything, it's pretty good. The first record, Money 2020, is great. It is ostensibly Green Day with a whole bunch of extra members involved, and Mike Dirnt sings a bunch of songs.
Did they not wear some kind of costume?
They're all like anonymous.
I thought you said that they'd all wear clogs. I was like, what? I thought you said they'd all wear clogs.
You need some kind of ear candle.
I've been a mold. I want to tell you something before we go from American Idiot. I'd never listened to this until 2 weeks ago.
Never?
No. Apart from the singles, I'd never heard it. I don't think I'll ever listen to it again.
Well, you know what? That's actually, though, what we talked about, because Rick, as he said himself, certainly up to Nimrod, was a card-carrying fan that would buy the records as they dropped. I went all the way up to Warning.
I did. Warning too is one of them.
Warning,
but after that, that's the first time I heard it, and I don't think I'll listen to it again.
As much as we agree that Warning is not a terrible album, I think it's just not terrible. You guys think it's quite good.
I think it's okay.
Yeah. I had absolutely no interest in hearing American Idiot. It completely did not register at all on my radar. And I think that's really interesting. And I like Rick, I'd heard the singles, obviously. I was still going to the odd rock club. You would always hear the singles, right? But I'd never heard the album from start to finish, ever. And I don't need to again.
I still think it's awesome, honestly.
Yeah. I don't think I need a 70-minute long Green Day album or a 60-minute long. It's too long.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as long as the 21st Century Breakdown.
Yeah, that again. I never need to hear that again.
Yeah.
Like those two, I was just like, this is too. I don't need this. And then I think what's the one after? Sorry, I'm skipping after 21st Century Breakdown.
That's the trilogy. Yeah.
The first one was good to listen to because it was 30 minutes or 20 minutes. I was like, cool.
Tre.
I'm in familiar water. And maybe that's why.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not 30 minutes, it's an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, but it's like, it's like they've not gave my dinner at once, it's 3 chunks, you know, I've got my starter. But yeah, just to roll back for a second. Yeah, sorry.
In 2007, whilst they're like writing like
the musical.
Well, they've done the musical obviously, but they're also writing 21st Century Breakdown.
Okay, yeah.
Foxborough Hot Tubs. You heard them?
No, it's another side project.
Yeah, garage rock revival band, sounds a bit like the Hives. Billy Joe's only singing on it. It is all ostensibly Green Day members.
Does one of the compilations come out around that time? Was it
Shenanigans came out between
Shenanigans,
that came out,
2002.
it came out between Warning and
It was good. I listened to that.
That's rarities and stuff, yeah.
yeah, it was B-sides from Dookie to Nimrod. It's
That's
also
right,
got
yeah.
it's got an instrumental song that's in The Spy Who Shagged Me.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a James Bond song. It's excellent.
Yeah, I liked
It's really, really good.
We should have put that in our Bond episode.
It's called Espionage. Yeah, so Foxborough Hot Tubs is also just like another like kind of procrastination project, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty fun if you like that kind of garage rock, like Strokesy, Hivesy.
I get the feeling that none of their side projects are totally throwaway. Like they
Not at
seem
all.
to have like a kind of like a base level that's very respectable. You know, I'm not saying they're essential, but none of them seem to be like dog shit.
clearly give themselves to it, which makes these side projects really interesting. From a musical point of view, is there's reverence for the material, right? It's not a fuck around.
What's quite interesting is that they decide to turn one of those side projects into an album in the near future.
Well, they did, yeah.
They did, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, to just get back to 21st Century Breakdown, big tracks from this, 21 Guns, and especially Know Your Enemy. I think this album's produced within an inch of its life.
Oh, yeah.
Completely, like, it's got what we would call kind of desktop string sections, you know, like out of the box kind of string sections. I think it's also probably the last time for me that Billy Joe sounds like Billy Joe, because his voice now, maybe it's a matter of production, maybe it's just the age in his voice. It doesn't have that sort of, you can't really put your finger on it, but that quality that makes it really sound like him.
It is different, and you can, if you watch live videos, there's loads of live videos from playing Coachella and stuff last year, and his voice does sound like that now. I think it's probably having to have more technique in order to get to that register.
Yeah,
with age,
and it's hard. Yeah, and they're doing so many shows and blah blah blah. I get it. The reception was pretty positive. It was praised for the scale and production. Personally, I don't like the production. I think it's very inhuman. You know. Seen as less focused than American Idiot. American Idiot had that very strong through line, but it did win a Grammy for Best Rock Album, which is, well, there you go. It tells you a lot about the Grammys.
To me, like, again, never heard it, and then having listened to America, it was like, let's make American Idiot 2.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's like, oh, the last one was long and successful, let's make this one. I was just like,
also
it does, and this is the thing. I think increasingly there's a thirst about them, and that's not a good look.
So the musical has got songs from this in it as well.
Right.
So it's supposed to, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a narrative, but it's also like Battery Hell musical. It's got like songs that are not from Battery Hell in it, you know.
Yeah.
They kind of make it seem more musically coherent. People who came into Green Day with American Idiot, this record is not quite as good, but it's still like very highly thought of by them. I think that the only good song in it is Murder City, because it sounds like an old Green Day song, and I think it's an actual banger, to be honest.
But not hopeless. I feel so useless in the murder city. Desperate, but not helpless.
Everything else is just too much for me. It's like too excessive. They spent 5 years writing it, so clearly it was going to be overwrought and overthought and
I think
overworked.
In that you get the sense of like they're struggling. It's like you're trying to like push out a shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than it just dropping it, barely having to wipe, and up you get and on with your day.
It's like the ambition.
This is like you're worried you're going to get yourself musical hemorrhoids.
It's got the ambition of doing something even bigger than American Idiot, but it's a struggle to get there. And it takes them 5 years.
And you can imagine the label getting in touch, going, "Oh, guys, how's that new album getting on?" You know, for like 3 years, and you're trying to, like, you see the label coming up in your kind of call, you know, register, and you're like, "Oh shit, I'll patch that." You know, I just think I get the sense of like something starting to not flow, you know, and it brings us to a triumvirate of forgettable albums, I would say, with Uno Dos Tre from 2012. So this is like a bit like what Kiss did, and a bit like what the Melvins then did to Pastiche Kiss, and now Green Day are sort of doing the same, an album for each member. But in saying that, peaked at number 2, or well, at least Uno did peak at number 2, which is the exact same place that Dookie peaked, which is mental. A major single on it was Oh Love. I wouldn't say it was major. Mixed reviews, a bit of a lack of depth, seen as fun but disposable. DOS comes out. We'll just go through these and you can tell me what you think about them together. But chart peak number 9, single on that was Stray Heart.
Everything that I want from you, but I just can't have you. Everything that I need
Mixed to negative reception, sits about 4.5 on Pitchfork, which is pretty harsh. Also, around about that time when DOS came out, Billy Joel went into rehab because he had a bit of a kind of on-stage breakdown at the iHeartRadio festival.
I do remember that, actually.
And then Tre comes out, the third one, named after the drummer. Chart peak is at 13 this time. There's a song called Ex-Kid is the sort of standout single in that.
It goes nothing, the shining's over. Ex-kid bombs away. It goes nothing, the shining's over and out again.
Slightly better received than the other trilogies or the previous two. Some songwriting maturity, shall we say, in a kind of warning sort of vein. Pitchfork, Metacritic, around about 6 out of 10. Those three taken together, is there a good album in there? One good album in there?
Possibly.
Yeah, probably.
So my thoughts, but it's kind of weird when you mentioned the Kiss thing. See, when bands get really big, right, there's a total dearth of people that are telling them when a bad idea is a bad idea, right? Yeah. And this is what happens here. But also, I kind of think that maybe these are probably mostly songs they'd written while trying to get to whatever was 21st Century Breakdown.
Yeah.
So they've kind of went, taken 5 years to write this record, by the way, now we've got fucking 30 songs for you. Like, how do you like that, fucking apples? You know what I mean?
This reminds me of the Weezer stories where they were like, Rivers wrote like 400 songs and they had all these songs to pick from.
I was speaking about this the other day. Rivers has written an app, right, which has basically got all of the demos that he's ever written on it.
That's fucking, which is the world doesn't need
crazy.
The world doesn't need
and apparently when he uploaded it, he was also uploading this even includes voice notes demos, and apparently there was some stuff he put on there which probably shouldn't have been there, so fans were basically telling him, you need to take this one off, take that one off. Wild.
Hell.
Clearly this band are just as prolific as that at this point in their career, because they're doing side projects, they're doing triple albums. After this in 2015, Billy Joel does These Paper Bullets, which is a modish rock and roll adaptation of Shakespeare's...
Modish?
Yes.
Like the Jam modish?
Yes, a modish rock and roll adaptation of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, which features songs that are 1964 style tunes that are a tribute to the Beatles. So, the guy's obviously got a lot of stuff.
Is it any good?
In here. It's not available. You can't hear it online. You can't hear it on platforms anyway.
Not a good sign.
Not an exact science I can control. Instead I hesitated and you looked so irritated at me.
Apparently the musical was okay.
Is this his Spinal Tap Saucy Jack?
Yeah,
okay.
Probably.
Saucy. I've had this idea for Jack the Ripper the musical, Saucy Jack.
A couple of songs for Cigarettes and Valentines end up on this trilogy, and I think a couple of songs from the trilogy kind of make it into different versions in These Paper Bullets. From what people on Reddit say, I don't know if that's necessarily true or not.
People on Reddit, you can't trust them, who can you trust?
Yeah, you're right, this is just a pure forgettable collection of songs. For me, the only songs I quite liked were actually on the third one. It was Brutal Love, which is kind of got a soppy kind of 60s doo-woppy vibe, which they sometimes do and do quite well.
Yeah.
The eyes of temptation, the flesh and my bones. Hello, stranger, I'm a disaster.
And then there's Walk Away, which reminds me a bit of The Who, but it's got a kind of fairly standard B-tier, mid-tempo Green Day vibe.
Well, it's time to walk away, walk away. Walk away. Walk away. Walk away.
I think that song comes from Cigarettes and Valentines as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, when you get to this point, if you're being objective, you could go back to any of their first 4 or even 5 albums and pick better singles from the album tracks.
Yeah.
than they're actually now picking out as the singles here.
And
that's diminishing returns.
Yeah, let's be honest as well. They don't play any of this shit live.
Yeah, yeah. So 2013, the band resumes touring after Billie Joe Armstrong's recovery, and 2015 they're inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which, by the way, is still missing some pretty sizable names. Revolution Radio comes out in 2016, and here we go, chart peak number 1. Again, Dookie did not get to number 1.
I got a fever for violent behavior. I'm sweating bullets like a modern Romeo. Shoot me up to anything. I am a semi-automatic lonely boy.
Bang Bang and Still Breathing are the major singles on this. Strong positive reviews, seen as being very politically engaged in a return to form, praised for its cohesion. Fuck me, man. Don't know what I was listening to.
It's fairly beige.
I can't remember it.
Yeah, can't remember it at all, despite listening to it multiple times.
I think Revolution Radio is a pretty decent song because it's got a lead guitar part in the intro and the chorus, which reminds me of Rise Against. But that's the only thing I can remember from
So
it.
it's good because it reminds you of another band that were doing stuff better.
Yeah.
Revolution Radio, Operation No Control on the headline. My love's bulletproof. Give me cherry bombs and gasoline.
Yeah,
And even in this period, Rise Against were not doing stuff better.
the thing is, right, this is walking into a number 1 position, not just in the US, but in the UK as well.
This is Green Day, baby.
And yeah, but that's not a given. I mean, especially after the trilogy, the last of the trilogy got to number 13. And again, you're like, oh, it's a band on the wane. No, they pull it out the bag again.
Well, they're writing a song about school shootings in the era of Trump, you know what I mean? So it's a fucking stick on.
On which note, 2018 Greatest Hits God's Favourite Band comes out, including one new track back in the USA. Then
The
Father
worst
of all
record.
Father of all Motherfuckers. That is the name of the album, folks. Father of all Motherfuckers.
I'd never heard of this in my life.
Neither had I.
You guys like it.
And but
no.
wait a minute. First of all, the album is called Father of All Motherfuckers. How the fuck does that get cleared?
It's called Father of All, ... ellipsis.
Right, yeah, but Father of All Motherfuckers comes out in 2020, right?
It's also censored on the sleeve.
Number 4 in the States, number 1 in the UK, and I had never heard of it. So
No,
don't
never.
get me wrong, I'm not saying my finger's the most on the pulse finger, and but the fact is, well, first of all, we were still doing the podcast,
We
so
were.
I shouldn't have known what I was doing. But this is number 1 in the UK, and I've never even fucking heard of it, right? So Father of All, as you say, single, and Meet Me on the Roof come out.
I'm crawling on the dance floor. Think I lost my phone, feeling like a toothache. Face is going numb. I beg 1,000 bodies.
Honestly, so given that we were working through the back catalogue and it was really a lot of diminishing returns, I was not in any way looking forward to this, and I quite like this. In fact, in the context of their late career albums, I think this is quite easily the best of the lot. It's basically the Eagles of death metal.
Yeah.
If you had completely different opinions on the Second Amendment, right?
Yes.
And it's the Eagles of death metal without having to constantly caveat that by saying, "Oh yeah, but I know that Jesse's a piece of shit." I think it's I mean, Mark, I'm amazed because I think it's objectively completely decent as an album.
Kick the dog with the world too close, we are a liar. Be the creeps with a stack of bone, we are a liar.
I think it's probably more akin, as I said, to their side projects. I think this sounds like a side project that has been slipped into the canon of the main project. But otherwise, where did this sound come from?
Yeah.
The reception was, as AI would tell us, mixed to negative, which is not good. It's 4.8 out of 10 on average. The critics didn't like the stylistic shift or the short runtime, which I find baffling these days because I thought short runtimes are total...
Maybe that's why I liked it.
It's an asset though.
So 22 minutes, 26 minutes, 22 minutes.
Some comments said it was underwritten. I don't hear that at all. I think it sounds quite fresh. I think it sounds, I mean, underwritten in terms of like not being mixed and fucking processed and to death. It actually just sounds like a good rock band to me. I get that it doesn't sound fuck all like what people expect Green Day to sound like, but given what Green Day have sounded like for the last 10 years at this point, I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
So I think the better record is A Long Shot, which is a 2018 solo-ish record by Billy Joe Armstrong. And it is pure 70s power pop with the occasional 60s doo-wop vocal and all that. He wrote the whole thing, played the whole thing, produced the whole thing himself. It's significantly better than this record.
Rick,
I don't know that one, but I said this one, I think I was just like, oh, it sounds different. And I can see why you
it's like
like
the
it.
salty pretzel, isn't
It's a salty pretzel.
And remember that was that in the first episode?
That's
It was the first episode.
So
yeah.
Rick, as a man that's had a life of ice cream,
Yep.
just as craving a salty pretzel.
And he
to
got-
go-
And I got my salty pretzel.
yeah.
Yeah,
Did
so-
I want another one because my mouth's dry? No, I didn't. And I think, but I can see why you like it, knowing like I know like the music you kind of like, so I can see why you listen. It's got a
Well, I mean, Eagles of Death Metal references Queens of Stone Age.
yeah, it does. To me,
Right.
that's what I thought. It sounds like Josh Homme guitar type sounds, bit of the Strokes.
Yeah.
What's that band that did the Rat?
Oh, the Walkman.
Walkman. That kind of like all that. It sounds like that kind of thing. You said it sounds like a side project. You didn't know it was good. Maybe it was. Maybe the records they would read their album. You give them that. It's done.
It sounds like the second Foxborough Hot Tubs record.
So
as
it might
well.
have been like, we're not releasing another project. We want a Green Day album. All right, have that one. It's
Sorry,
like,
the third Foxborough
Yeah, no, it's
Hospital
like-
record because
Literally, they just dug their heels
DOS.
in and they were like, well, we're not giving you another Green Day album. That's what you're getting.
it's like
Yeah.
Neil Young and the Shocking Pinks. You want a rock and roll album? Here you go.
honestly, for me, The Long Shot should have been the choice. You know, I don't know why they didn't use that as a Green Day record, probably because Billy Joe's got a specific vibe about it or whatever, but I did much prefer it to that. And when I listened to this, I was like, so you've done Foxborough Hot Tubs, which was pretty decent as doing that, and it's done really well. Then you had DOS, which is like a really poor version of that, and then for me, this is just like the second derivative of something they did really well.
Not meaning to labour the point, but given that Green Day to me at this point, as a sound, as a project, as a product, is completely rinsed and washed out, and nothing of any real lasting value is coming out of it, to the extent that, like Rick agreed, where you listen to an album multiple times and I cannot remember a single thing off those albums. This album at least left a mark, and I was like just glad that there was something coming out. And I don't doubt
fair enough. Like,
the guys in the bands have like quite diverse tastes, and the projects, you know, the network and the Foxborough Hot Tubs and stuff, which continued after this, demonstrate that they have aptitudes out with just the Green Day sound. But the Green Day sound at this point is completely burnt out. It's completely done. So I was actually quite glad to hear this. That is my salty pretzel. It was more than welcome, and I actually really quite enjoyed it. And bearing in mind, man, I came at it with absolutely no expectations. I didn't even like American Idiot. I was completely off the Green Day train from 2000 at the latest. This was like, you know what? Objectively, I've got no dog in the fight. This is actually pretty good. And
Yeah.
I think it's actually totally decent. And I would even suggest, as much as it sounds like Eagles of Death Metal, when you hear how much some of the other Green Day stuff sounds derivative, I don't think it's all that derivative either.
yeah, I mean, so this year they also released a second network record, Money Money 2020. We told you, because they're back. So they've released this other and an EP with them as well.
Yeah.
So they've released like essentially 3 records in 2020, and also Billy Joe did a solo record,
Yeah.
which is all covers.
Is that the one he did with his sons?
But his sons are, I think they're not done YouTube videos playing it with him, but
Alright.
he wrote and recorded the whole
They
thing.
did like
himself.
Manic Monday and
Yeah.
stuff like that, yeah.
So like the pandemic was kind to the members of Green Day, you know. There's also, I should be clear as well, there's a project called The Frustrators that Mike Dirnt was in, and it's still going. For completeness sake, I just want to bring that out there.
That's
But
right.
yeah, I think this is a weird year for them, I think, as a band, you know, because they do this and then they've got other shit happening as well, whilst the whole world is like locked down, you know.
Yeah. So the next record they bring out as Green Day is Saviours in 2024. It peaks at number 4 in the USA, but again at number 1 in the UK. I do remember this a little bit because I remember the song The American Dream Is Killing Me, which I think's inane. And then that One-Eyed Bastard song, I sort of remember. To be honest, like when I listened to this album coming at it, I mean, clearly I didn't engage with it when it came out. I was not remotely interested in Green Day at that point.
Off the boat so far.
But having come back to it with my podcast hat on, although we'll notice that Rick's taking his hat off.
The stress of post-warning era. Green Day was too much for my big
brain
fat
was
head.
Overheating.
Yep.
It feels to me like this album just steals lots of sounds from other places, and not in the way that they tend to do where they pay tribute with their side projects. It feels like they're a little bit stuck for ideas, and I hear lots of like influences that cross the line into being quite derivative. So I do hear a lot of other pop punk, and I would suggest pop punk from bands that they influenced, so they start to borrow from the people that are like inspired by them. To give some examples, I think like the track Bobby Socks doesn't sound like Green Day, not least because of that vocal that's quite, you know, like gruff. I think Goodnight Adeline sounds exactly like Oasis in the verse, and I'm not being glib there. It really sounds like Oasis in the verse.
Can you feel my pain? Can you sing my sorrow? Here comes a better day, but it's got nothing to do with tomorrow.
I noticed there's like a historical quote by Noel Gallagher where he makes a kind of jibe about Green Day ripping off Wonderwall for something. I think he's been quite tongue-in-cheek, as he is often, but this one sounds like Liam Gallagher singing an Oasis B-side, and then the chorus sounds like Weezer, and I mean it really sounds like Weezer. So I think they really feel starved of inspiration. 1981, totally decent track, but it's precisely a turbo version of Elvis Costello again. I think they're really struggling to know what the fuck they want to sound like now, and it really feels like they're starting to kind of scrape the barrel a wee bit for inspiration in the Green Day brand. They've got ideas elsewhere, but in the Green Day brand, I just don't think they have anything more. But it met with generally positive reviews, you know, strong hooks praised for that, you know, but I would say like The American Dream Is Killing Me is not a strong hook. It's just inane. It's just a repeated, inane, overproduced like soundbite, and that's what passes as a strong hook. But yeah, some called it a solid late career album instead of a reinvention. I don't rate it. I don't think it's up to much.
No, I can't remember it. Going through everything after Warning, I've not heard it. The thing I enjoyed the most was the BBC sessions.
I mean, that's really good.
Like stellar. That's the one thing that I hadn't heard before that I want to listen to that again.
Yeah, that just shows how untouchable they are as a live band.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah,
so it just
that's what I was thinking about the rhythm section. Like Trey Cool gets overlooked because he looks like a doofus.
Yeah,
and he's like, and his name's Trey Cool.
Does anyone know his real name?
It'll be on Wikipedia.
I can see it,
but is it not? Maybe that is his actual name. That's
Troy Dweeb.
So what
Troy Dweeb.
Troy Dweeb.
I actually find it really interesting that they've never done a record which is like live, like and it's all like they've never done like an Albini style like live in the room.
Yeah.
Oh right, okay,
record,
they do like live albums. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so Saviours I think is just like a collection. It's like a running the hits almost, you know.
It's got little bits of all those different albums.
I think so.
I would say maybe more so the later albums. I don't think it's necessarily got some of the purer moments of the early.
It does have some of the speed in places in some of the songs, but yeah, I think
the
it's
production
mostly,
negates that though. The production is so tight, and like I say, it's very dehumanized. You know, I think like they're not the only band, far from it, that gets into that world of like compressing things within an inch of its life because they know it's getting played out of a mobile phone and not a stereo. But like the compression just robs so much of their work, their later work, of any humanity as well, that it's a little bit hard for my relatively old ears to actually give it a fair hearing, because I'm just like, it just sounds so controlled and do you know what I mean?
It's like it's, again, but I suppose we're comparing them, the metal equivalent is Metallica. We're just like, this is so hard to listen to, it's hurting my ears.
Yes,
it's, I mean, I don't think, certainly Rick, you're not a big Mogwai fan, right? But
no, they're fucking pish. I just like to have that noted, and I hope you're listening. I think you're fucking pish.
I'll pitch them. He keeps knocking them.
I'm going to make that the TikTok.
The TikTok. I just like to let you know, I think your label and your band are fucking pish.
It's so clearly my feelings of Mogwai are different, right? But the point is, and we noted it on the episode, that I did sort of start to struggle sometimes with their stuff when they just got so into compression. And I think at this point Green Day is just all compression, like Square Wave City, man. And I just don't know how. I mean, I get that you're saying it shares the speed and, you know, a lot, some similar DNA with their earlier material, but when you look at it, you're like, Jesus fuck, man, how do you even have the time? How can you even process it on that level? Because to me, I just hear something that is so, I don't know, so controlled.
Aye.
It's vegan cheese.
It's
like you're trying
it's so processed. Aye.
It's like, I love the taste of cheddar, but now I've got vegan cheese.
Copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Do you know what I mean? And I think what is probably the most interesting thing of all
Big
this
claim.
is that is, for the most part, the same producer that's making like these records from the start till now.
Yeah, but there's a very different industrial process.
Clearly,
that's dictating his workload. So if he doesn't follow the trends, he's not getting another job.
Getting work,
and the fact is, everybody's listening to this shit on mobile phones. I mean, there's a ridiculous stat, I can't remember it now, but it's like the percentage of people that listen to music out of that speaker on the bottom. I'm pointing at Rick's mobile phone right now, folks that are listening, and the percentage
we do
of people,
as well, though. We do it as well.
Of course. But the percentage of people that are listening to it at a full audio experience out of that, as opposed to a sound system, is astonishing.
The Dark Side of the Moon has never sounded better.
The thing is, the tail is wagging the dog. You know what I mean? Like that is dictating what this band sounds like.
But there's also an element of, so Rab got a stepdaughter, and he's just like, you know, she's
sorry, I'm gonna translate that. Rab from Moonshine Docks.
All right, yeah, sorry. That Rab from Moonshine Docks' mother band. He's got a stepdaughter who's teenage, and he's like, we had this conversation, old man conversation at band practice, like, they don't listen to albums. What's your favourite album? I don't have a favourite album. I have a favourite song. Like, do you know, listen to, like, no, so like the phone, like Saviours and stuff, it doesn't really need the rest. As long as it's got the big song that people are going to listen to, the rest of it is like farts like us that are going, oh, let's listen to that new album. And because they're not listening, are people even planning for a chronological order?
And we've discussed pros and cons to that, right? Because the pros of that are the playlists of many of that generation of listeners
quite
are
varied,
incredibly diverse, and that's actually really cool and producing some really interesting stuff. The downside is that the attention spans are short, and you're writing for optimization. You're not writing for artistry, so you're not getting your new Dark Side of the Moons or your new kind of opuses. You know what I mean? We don't need to relitigate the whole thing.
I mean,
what I want to say is, we're about to get to the absolute central question, the question that the audience, any of them that have made it this far, have been waiting.
2.5 hours into the show, we're here.
They have been waiting for us three guys to address this.
Middle-aged men.
Yep.
Is Green Day punk? Now, allow me to dig a bit.
You know the answer. Why you know the answer to this question? Why are you asking this question?
Because we're a podcast and we have to, and this is like that kind of like.
Listen to our episode with Stuart
like
home.
This is like the A/B tested, you know, like what is going to get the biggest hit? Like Trump goes too far. You know, this is Green Day punk, right? Mark, you can clip this for your social media. I know how you like the social medias, right?
Ask it again.
Is Green Day punk? So for all their cynicism, right? Because this is the thing, in their lyrics, they are quite a cynical band, right? And their pops at government and things like that, right? Green Day never actually sound bummed out, you know. Like would you say so? I don't think so. No, the words kind of get swept along in like these sort of wacky races, colourful, upbeat kind of power pop anthems, and it's sort of
That's interesting,
it's
man.
like the I think some of the lyrics decontextualized are actually quite cynical and negative, but the delivery is so like almost inherently upbeat that it's like writing ice out on the side of a poodle or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
like,
it's
fuck ice, yeah,
it's
I get you.
The delivery and the subject don't always marry.
Well, maybe I'm the faggot America. I'm not a part of a redneck agenda. Sweating bullets like a Mario Romeo. Give me that. Shoot me up to entertain. I am a somewhere automatic rolling boy. Give me death or give me in. Daddy's little psycho and mommy's little soldier. Don't want no huddle masses. TikTok and taxes under the overpass. Sleeping in broken glass. We are not well.
And I think Insomniac is a great example of that, by the way. We'll get to that in a second. But in terms of Green Day being punk, let's go to let's call on our first witness, John Lydon. John Lydon has said
the court calls John Lydon.
here's a quote from John Lydon, right? So there we are fending off all that, and it pisses me off that years later a wank outfit like Green Day hop in and nick all that and attach it to themselves. They didn't earn their wings to do that, and if they were true punk, they wouldn't look anything like they do. Presumably, he then went back to supporting Nigel Farage, selling butter and doing the Masked Singer, that fucking tool.
Yeah.
Others in the punk scene, though, came to the defence of the band. I mentioned this earlier. Brett Gurewitz, he's defended Green Day, albeit nobody quoted seems to have anything particularly coherent to say. But Brett Gurewitz has said, Green Day are a punk band, but you know, punk is the legacy of rock and roll, and Green Day are the biggest band in the genre.
Okay, so that's just a collection of words.
Just, you can parse that pretty much any way you want. Billy Joe Armstrong, also not the most articulate, but has said, sometimes I think we've become redundant because we're this big band now, we've made a lot of money, we're not punk rock anymore. But then I think about it and just say, you can take us out of a punk rock environment, but you can't take the punk rock out of us, which is not the best defence, really. In 2021, he also condemned the band's labelling as pop punk by critics in a Vulture magazine article, saying, I never really liked that term pop punk. It turned into a sort of genre. Well, duh.
Yeah.
It was a genre before they were in it.
I know.
I never thought of myself as a pop artist. I've always been left of centre. A bit of a non sequitur there. To say you're a pop punker, it never sat well with me. This is why Billy Joe Armstrong doesn't speak all that often, right?
Yeah.
Because he's just not that great. But he did acknowledge the band's more melodic punk style compared to other bands from the Bay Area scene. But he also brought up, repeatedly the fact that they performed alongside, we've talked about it, Neurosis, Engage, Spitboy, Blatz, Filth, bands with more credibility in that circle, I think probably his best quote actually comes from a Kerrang article about Insomniac describing the feeling after Dookie went, interstellar. He says, I think I was just lost. I couldn't find the strength to convince myself that what I was doing was a good thing. I was in a band that was huge because it was supposed to be huge because our songs were that good, but I couldn't even feel that I was doing the right thing because I felt like I was making so many people angry. I kind of find that is his most interesting comment, because Dookie was huge because the songs on Dookie were fucking brilliant. Dookie didn't get huge because they were sexy guys.
No.
It didn't get huge for any reason other than, yes, okay, it had a major label behind it, but ultimately that major label had a whole plethora of artists who were trying to make huge, and Dookie was the one that got fucking huge. And I think genuinely, especially back in that day before algorithms, that was a self-sorting thing. That was like just the power of those songs. It's 4-star review in Kerrang translated into what's close to a 10 out of 10 rating for that album, in terms of legacy. So Rick, are Green Day punk?
I would say so. I mean, I don't take anything John Lydon says with any weight anymore. I love the Sex Pistols and everything.
The Sex Pistols are a punk band.
Yeah, are they
Yeah,
punk?
I would say so.
Yeah.
A
bit late in the day to ask that question.
Yeah,
pretty much, man.
To me, again, Rab, they are the punk band. They're
Really? I think that's surprising.
We're having a conversation about this after this.
yeah, like a lot of it.
Bonus material
We could
of
talk
12
about,
hours.
there's you've also got your Stooges and your MC5, and you've got all these kind of bands, but like,
MC5 are way more punk than
yeah,
Sex Pistols.
but it depends
Yeah.
what you're. So there's that. It's like, what is? You have that. There's the conversation. What is punk? Is it music?
Ask Stuart
I'm
Home.
going to have to phone Stuart home here.
Right. So is punk the UK subs and sounding like the UK subs and wearing a spiked leather jacket and spiky hair? Is punk the Clash singing Rock the Casbah? Because is Joe Strummer a punk? Is Henry Rollins a punk? He's a millionaire and he lives in a nice house and he does all kind of stuff. Is Henry Rollins less of a punk than Ian Mackay? So if that's the case, is Ian is Fugazi punk because they kept everything DIY and did it themselves?
Is Nirvana punk?
Yeah.
So let's bring it back then. So
I would say they are. Yes.
okay,
Sorry,
so-
I'm a rambling mess.
no.
I
I
think
think
it's fair.
all those points are totally fair, and I think
Because you're highlighting
There's a
the
whole-
absurdity
yeah.
of the conversation.
There's something of the conversation that suits Johnny. Like John Lydon, I think if Green Day said that we owe everything to John Lydon and we love the Sex Pistols, he'd be like, "Yeah, you're fucking right, you do," and make the face. And unfortunately, the nature of punk is it brings characters, pastiches of themselves.
Yeah.
Johnny Rotten is a character who he plays.
played.
Oh, no, he still does. I'll go in the Masked Singer.
Yeah, I think he does, yeah.
And then he's like, "I'm using that money to fund my next record of Public Image. Will not be public. Well, it won't be palatable." So it's him doing the Masked Singer, taking the money from a major TV to make a Public Image record that 20 folk might listen to. Punk.
A lot of folk really
Yeah.
like Pill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pillow,
I
great.
mean,
like,
that's a whole episode about
That is-
anyway, so
let's not get. We're not getting
yeah,
to
see,
that.
but
But
I
I think ultimately, yes, they are a punk band, and then it comes down to your moral opinions on capitalism and major.
Yeah,
label.
I mean,
Yeah.
also, it's a transitory thing, right? Because you can be something and then transition out and not being something into being something else.
and also go back as well.
and
Yeah.
go back. So, I mean, I would suggest that there's a very good argument that says Green Day clearly started as a punk band in a punk scene, completely like bootstrapped their whole thing and just, succeeded on their merits. And then sort of became a corporate product.
I think, unfortunately, what happens is it's like happens with everything else. Green Day are a really good punk band and they write really good songs, and everybody's popular and they're like, "Cool, I want one of those." To finish, and then you end up with Good Charlotte.
Well, I do want to be clear, by the
Yeah,
way. John Lydon is the embodiment of an aspect of punk, which largely, I think, boiled down to its shithousery. That I don't
Yeah.
think he embodied much else about it other than it's like swearing on TV and being a little bit objectionable. And then since then, he's grown to represent so many bad things about it, not least its appropriation by commercial purposes, but certainly it's fucking transition into this counterculture thing that is easily adapted into the right wing, which is totally ironic. My take on this, I mean, I've posed the question to Rick. Maybe you can respond once I'd give my take here.
He's going, "I just want to stop talking about Green Day."
This is more interesting than Green Day. That question
I
is.
think
What's your favourite shade of green?
Green Day. Green Day are a simple product for simpler times for me, right? So they're fundamentally a very simple formula, right? And maybe that's why they become so easy to dismiss. Because I think we often dismiss our younger selves. Go with me in this, right? We dismiss our younger selves, right?
Speak for yourself.
If you don't, I think there's something wrong with you, to be honest with you. They have an approach and an outlook and a politics that reflects the certainty, that weird youthful certainty and sloganeering of well-meaning teenagers, right? Catchy sound bites about war and the hegemony of the USA and George Bush and things like that, right? Easy targets in a lot of ways, right? The sound...
They were pushing 30 by that point, mate, just to be clear.
Fair enough.
In fact,
though.
no, they were 32 at that point.
Yeah. The sound, especially this album, I think takes me right back to when I was 15 years old. And frankly, I was full of shit when I was 15 years old, in a nice way, mostly, in a well-intentioned way. Clearly, I'm not full of shit anymore. Right, I'm sure.
Oh, wait, I take a drink.
Yeah.
That's our show, folks. We'll see you next week.
But
There's the soundbite.
but I think that cringe that we do feel or should feel, Mark, at our younger
I do
selves,
feel that, yes.
and our
I'm just saying there's probably folk that are maybe not
right.
that
Well, I
listen
think
that don't think that. So.
we most of us do and should feel a cringe at our younger, certainly politicised selves, right?
I think we must.
And
honestly.
naivety, right? And political naivety in particular. I think Green Day become a bit of a fall guy for that. Again, go with me here. Because to be clear though, they absolutely invite that. That's a decision they made with that brand of Green Day post-Dookie when it became, or certainly post-Warning, let's say, when it became American Idiot. I think that's where they made that contract, right? They wanted to keep sloganeering and they wanted to keep bouncing about as though they were teenagers and not let any of the messages or any of the music get overly complex. Keep everything simple. Simple messages, simple music, broad, basically, right? But broad and like generally left of centre, as Billy Joe said himself, right? Generally left of centre. I do think most people probably recognise they should probably know better by that point. You know, certainly people of their age, even people like us who were younger than them, sort of said, well, look, guys, it's a bit more complicated than that. But that's not really what they were about, and I don't think that's what they were going for. Yes, they probably wanted to be taken more seriously in some senses in terms of like the fact that they're good musicians, as we established way back to pre-1039 Slapped It. You know, like they were good musicians.
Great.
Never really taken seriously in that respect. But would they give up one being success for the other being taken seriously? I don't think so. I think they recognised from 2004 onwards that they were Green Day. They were a huge product. They were paying a lot of people's bills, not just their own, but their entire superstructure around them. They don't want to write nuanced treatises about the vulnerabilities of socialised healthcare.
Who does?
Or
well, like,
progressive politics.
no one does.
I mean, and definitely when it comes to progressive politics, you know, in terms of critical treatises, that's why we've got Dave Mustaine, Glenn Danzig and half of the Ramones to represent that conservative, anti-woke side of things. So as it stands, you know, Green Day are post-2004, and that just so happens to be the point where I tuned out of them, but I think that actually turns out to be for a reason in hindsight. I think it's because they ceased to be this energetic, exciting young punk band and they became just a very competent, very able, very successful commercial product. And at that point I was like, is that punk? Well, that's when the question becomes fair game to me. I don't think you can really impugn their motives before that. I think after that, they're just a really big band that play kind of fast and kind of like with distortion pedals. I don't think there's a lot there to challenge the status quo. I think everything is quite shallow but well-intentioned, and it's there to sort of loosely engage teenagers and young folk, and sort of like at the same time feather their nest. As it stands, Insomniac, the album we're talking about, is pre that, and I think it was apocryphally sort of a riposte to accusations that they were no longer punk, right, when Dookie came out. And I think at that point it's still an unfair criticism. I think they still were quite punk, even though they were commercially successful. There was still a sincerity and something that arguably was more authentically punk than John Lydon, really, when you consider how the Sex Pistols came about and how engineered they were. Green Day were not engineered in the same way as the Sex Pistols, right? So yeah, I think Insomniac deserves appraisal on the merits of it is a genuine effort by a punk band that have suddenly, unexpectedly achieved great success and are striving to reclaim a little bit of their sort of credentials and their self-respect and a sense of like where they belong. Right? And I think Billy Joe's actually said that, like a sense of not belonging. Where do we belong? And this is what this album represents. So maybe as we hit the home straight here, we should just look at Insomniac in a little bit of like closer detail, because that is ultimately what we're saying we think is a little bit unsung. Do we agree?
No. No. So first of all, I just want to call out the fact that you've asked the question, is Green Day punk? Been able to prepare yourself for it, and we can't do that. So thanks for that, Chris.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
I
that.
thought that's a pretty obvious question, though, is it not?
No,
It's
because
it's the constant present question when Green Day's there. It's asterisk.
It's a constant question.
Yeah, it's
a
always
question
a
about
question.
every single punk band that anybody likes. They're no punk. How
Yeah.
are they no punk? They have to fucking wash their jeans.
So whilst
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
so
He washed
He's still
in
going,
general.
yeah.
Totally,
He took a
yeah.
bath last year.
So whilst asking that question might seem like an obvious thing to you, for people that are actually been in that kind of music, that's not an obvious question, nor an easy question.
I did invite you to digest our collective take. He wasn't briefed.
Yeah, I'm not going to respond, but I'm just saying.
I'm just saying that on the back of that, we're going to go into Insomniac.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, it's not even really a question for me, to be honest, because I think that the thing that people conflate when it talks about punk rock music, right, or whatever punk is that there seems to be this thing where, and you mentioned Good Charlotte, Rick. It's like,
oh my God.
People think that commerciality means something can no longer be punk rock, and I think that's clearly not true, because the Clash are a band that existed and were huge and played stadiums, you know. Yeah. The Ramones
signed to, they're all signed to, the goal was to be signed to a major label.
Yeah, and as Stuart had put in his book as well, it's like some of these people who are punks would do anything to write pop songs and get signed, but they're still seen as being punk,
like Slaughtering the Dogs,
you know. So when we talk about if we're using commerciality as a yardstick for if something is punk or not, then you're kind of, it's a losing game at that point. You know, it totally is. That's not the yardstick we should be using to measure if something's punk or not. The more interesting question is, what is the yardstick that one would use?
Don't strawman me here. Right. I didn't say that commerciality.
No, I'm not saying that you are, but I think that a lot of people would default to that position, because you mentioned Good Charlotte, which I think is kind of moving towards that, right?
They're fucking trash, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they're seen as being quite legit by a lot of folk.
Who?
Right?
I will say, I remember Krang, the Good Charlotte, or there's this punk band, Good Charlotte. I was probably too old for it. It wasn't for.
No, I mean, I
think there's always you remember, it's not for you.
Yeah,
it's not Good Charlotte isn't for me, and that's okay. And I think it takes, maybe it's because of my age. It takes, sometimes I still get a wee bit rash about it, but it takes and it's people like, I'll go back, Youngblood. Watch out, pop music, rock spoon is coming for you. I don't care. That's not for me. And you're at the fucking Grammys, shut your hole. It's like getting angry about Beyonce. Beyonce's not for me. That's okay. You enjoy Beyonce, and I'll go and listen to Discharge. But do you know what I mean?
It's quite far apart.
But but it's okay if you don't like them, because that's not for you either. And I think it's okay to think not to like things. But I think at young is like, I fucking hate, they're no punk, And I think,
like you said earlier on, Chris, it's a nuanced thing, right? It's as you get older, you become more pragmatic, and you start to say, well, it's actually a bit more complicated than just saying it's X or Y.
It's exactly that, right? And nobody can resolve not just the punk question, but so many questions, right?
so many questions.
Fascism, writing literature,
favourite shade of green,
into one actual formula. The fact is that there's always going to be interpretation and nuance. There's always going to be a blurry area, right? But I would say that fairly clearly, Good Charlotte, for example, the way they were manufactured, the way they were nurtured through MTV, through celebrity and all that kind of stuff, they clearly are on they are not on the boundary. They are well beyond the boundary of credibility in that argument.
They were not a manufactured band, right? True. They were an actual band, but they just so happened to be signed to a major label really quickly and were part of the MTV machine.
Yeah.
So we should make that distinction quite clear, because there are manufactured bands, the Sex Pistols, which
exactly that's another
which were a thing. So and I would argue, Rick, they're not a punk band.
All right.
But
Good Charlotte, more
Good
punk
Charlotte, more punk than Sex Pistols.
So
newsflash.
There's
an A/B test for you,
totally, man. Yeah. Fuck. Oof. I need to get my fucking fireproof jacket on already, man. No, but I think if you think about in my mind, Green Day are a punk band because they've got the sound.
Yeah.
Right, and that's, for me, that's kind of ultimately what it comes down to.
They also did their time in the trenches.
It doesn't last forever, though.
They did
the sound. They're still doing the sound, though.
Yeah, but the sound is not punk. Man.
They played fucking Wigan on a Tuesday night. They've played in Hull.
They've been here. But you don't. What I'm saying is, you don't. It's not like you set out, you qualify, and that's you for the rest of your life. They got to a point where they were no longer.
Okay, so I guess this is just a question I'm going to ask you. So they're now a rock band. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's kind of that's your flag is in the sand.
Commercial rock product. So, as I said, there's no hard and fast definition. There's no scientific equation for what is punk. But they are clearly, their music is buoyed by millions of pounds of promotion, hundreds of thousands of pounds of production, huge arena tours. You can't credibly argue, without the phrase becoming meaningless entirely, that they are still punk. They certainly were, though. And my argument is that at Insomniac, they absolutely still were. And all the shit they took off the back of Dookie, which was not their fault that they wrote a great album, They wrote a great album that loads of people wanted to hear, with absolute adherence to their consistent values.
Yeah, there's no difference.
Musically,
Yeah.
exactly. The people that rejected them on the basis of that, including like Gilman and stuff, like, fuck that kind of elitism. That is not realistic. The fact that now I kind of agree that they're not a punk band doesn't mean that I agree with the people that fucking pied them out the club back then out of sheer snobbery. They aren't a punk band anymore. No, they're a fucking international brand now. They're no more punk than Coca-Cola now, right? But back then, but that's not to say that they're invalid. They're still, I wouldn't even say innocuous. I say they're a reasonably positive force in society. Debatable, but
Well, it's good they exist as opposed to other
the
bands.
fact is, the period we're talking about, I completely go to the mat for them at this Insomniac era. In fact, I would go to the mat for them right up to Nimrod, as I hope I made clear. But beyond that, I think their motives start to shift.
I think
subtly.
I think, I can see the club thing. Sorry, we'll get to the record because I know it's been ages. But like, there's that. Have you ever seen that there's that 4-part punk documentary? It starts off like the influence of punk, and then it goes to UK2, it goes to like Green, and it covers Green Day, and it's got Ian Mackay and blah blah blah. It's got Fatback. Yeah, they're a punk band.
It's always got Ian Mackay.
And it's but Ian Mackay's like, he's the like, why would you sign with a major label? Why would you do this? They go that if they want to come to that, fine. We'll just change direction and do something else. And like the likes of a Gilman, it's maybe not so much fuck Green Day, they've sold out. It's like, didn't invite your pal because he stinks a BO. What does having them there? What does it bring? Major label Green Day, it brings major label. Like, we don't want that.
Yeah,
we don't want these people in our area.
Space,
It's like bring in your shit, pal. We don't want them here, so we're going to have to reject you because we want to. These are our moral values. This is what we want our space to be.
Aye, I know.
By the way,
I get
hang
it.
on, that's a really good point, because to be fair, I don't know the nuances of what Gilman Street's kind of attitude was, and I don't want to mischaracterise them.
Of course, no.
That may well be their motivation, and that's a totally valid motivation. I remember it when The View got signed, and suddenly Dundee was swamped with people wanting to sign another View. And genuinely, we spoke about this in the Dundee is Fundy episode, right? Going right back. It ruined Dundee as like one of the most interesting music scenes in the UK at the time, because people suddenly just wanted to book bands to get these A&R guys what they wanted, because the city got flooded by A&R guys looking for this kind of next View indie band, cheeky chappy indie band, and all this amazing
Never
post-hardcore died in its arse. And so I can completely understand the motivation of Gilman Street there. I don't know that was their motivation.
Yeah, me neither.
If they simply, I'm maybe strawmanning them and saying, look, if they simply rejected Green Day because they happen to be successful by being very good songwriters, that's not valid. If that's not the case, I'm in the wrong.
Well, it's obviously not a house rule that stuck, right? Because Green Day have played it a bunch of times since.
Yeah.
AFI played it. Bad Religion have played every band that signed to a major label,
played it.
including Rancid.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the band that people thought would never, they did it for 2 records. Was it one? There was definitely one in Interscope anyway. But they were the band that people like. They're probably the most punk band in terms of attitude and sound and style and ethos, and even they did it.
Yeah.
And there was, to be fair, it was around about the same time as American Idiot came out, so there was definitely something in the water. But we need to figure out what the yardstick we're using to measure this is before we actually have a discussion as to what falls on which side of that.
It's the eternal conversation. What is punk? And it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And for some people, it'll be looking like this. For some people, it'll be sounding like this.
Aye.
For some people, it doesn't matter what you look like or you sound like. It's how you conduct yourself. It's taking what you've listened to and then taking it into your own personal life.
Yeah.
Is it going to Rebellion for 4 days and watching an incarnation of some UK 82 punk band that's got a dad and his 3 sons that had one single, and you get to spike your hair up and wear your tartan jeans? For some people, it is a lifestyle. It's like any kind of lifestyle. It's like still being, I don't know, the 60-year-old guy who cuts about with his cut off Iron Maiden jacket. That's his life. He's living his lifestyle. And to do that takes a bit of balls. Maybe you've not improved as a human, or you've not moved on. But things change, and I think it is very difficult. And like the Sex Pistols is a whole thing that nobody's ever going to. The Sex Pistols were manufactured. The Sex Pistols were manipulated. Sex Pistols, and substitute Britney Spears for the Sex Pistols. Oh my God, that's tragic. Manipulated manager. I said, go and you just kill yourself. That'll be fun. Oh, it sells papers.
Aye.
But they were a band who wrote songs, and they're talented.
Terribly influential.
They are. And for better or for strong personality, that sometimes you have to kind of and you can see, not to talk about, sorry, talk about Cesspit, but you can see why they're on tour with a different singer. That's why I play some fucking songs I wrote with a guy who's not a pain in the hoop.
Who is actually more punk rock than John Lydon ever was.
And the thing is, right, there's clearly going to be people that are so overwhelmingly in the realm of punk rock that you can't fucking possibly reasonably debate that they're not punk rock. And then there's a massive quantum cloud, all right, where it's
Schrodinger's punks.
Yeah, Schrodinger's punks, right? Where it's like, as soon as they become aware that they're punk, the whole reality gets thrown into question, right? Okay, but there's that, and we cannot. That is the bit that everybody ends up arguing about, like trying to turn that cloud into a line, and that line will never fucking happen. It is impossible because there are so many interpretations and so many factors and dynamics to it, right? It just won't happen, and it's a meaningless debate beyond a certain point. You have to accept there's a subjectivity to it, right?
I think I figured out what the title of the episode is. Our Green Day, Schrodinger's punks.
Schrodinger's punks.
So, Insomniac, though, as I've made clear on a couple of occasions here, I adamantly believe that they were still genuinely a well-meaning and intentioned and fully sincere punk band at this point, just grappling with like unexpected success, and success that was born of simply writing a really, really good record. Right? A really, really good record. A total, like, you couldn't have planned for it. And God knows, if you could plan for records like that, every label would be doing it, and every label would be securing maximum profits on every dollar they spend, right? So the overall context to Insomniac, it came just 15 months after Dookie. It was written and recorded during the intense touring and the media backlash in the punk community to Dookie.
I love that shit, by the way, when bands do that.
I love that as well, yeah, absolutely. And it's often understood as being very reactionary. It's a bit angrier, a bit faster. Yes, I get that in the big scheme of things it doesn't sound angry or particularly fast, but it is relatively, right? The critical reception was that they generally were quite positive towards it, although they were a bit cautious. Many sort of like embraced that whole kind of the fact that it was rejecting, a bit like the In Utero thing versus Nevermind. It was criticised by some for a limited stylistic range, and I do believe, actually, I do agree with the fact that it is a little bit very subtly more monotone than Dookie. The likes of Rolling Stone praised it quite a bit, felt it was a lot darker than Dookie. Spin, very influential at the time, highlighted the pace, and they also drew attention to the bitterness in the lyrics. It does have much more pessimistic lyrics. The NME, which was massive here at the time, not so much anymore, but they kind of welcomed...
Sorry, who?
Does it still exist?
I think it does, but it's kind of a pop magazine now. It's just a website now, isn't it?
That's it.
They kind of welcomed the rawness, and they felt it gave the band punk credibility again.
I don't think it's particularly raw sounding, to be honest.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, when you consider where they could have gone, I think it's they took Dookie and then they veered back towards just making something quite saturated instead of making something more polished. Warning being the example, or even Nimrod to some extent. But anyway, commercially, debuted at number 2, reached the top 5 in loads of countries, including the UK and Australia, but it did not, and this is a key thing, it did not come close to Dookie's success or longevity. Right, so I think it's like 5.8 million, whereas Dookie is probably 5 or 6 times that in terms of sales. The singles on it, Geek Stink Breath, came out before the album. And reached number 1 on a number of like kind of indie charts and things. I remember when that came out. Fan reaction was initially quite polarising because a lot of the new fans to Green Day were really, really hoping for Dookie 2, and a lot of the original punk fans had abandoned the band, including your kind of Gilman types. So in that sense, they were kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah. Do you pander to this new audience, or do you go for the real punk crowd again? And they didn't really do either. But there were some that had stuck with them who kind of embraced it as a bit of a true punk response to this flash in the pan success, or at least at the time Dookie was seen as being flash in the pan success. They did not know what was to come, clearly. and a lot of the kind of long-term fans really liked Insomniac, cited it as a bit of a favourite because of its speed, its heaviness, the emotional honesty that was in it, the cynicism, the pessimism, lack of compromise. Live, a lot of the tracks in it have become live favourites. Brain Stew, Geek Stink Breath, and the track Stuck With Me are really, really big in their live sets, and have really gone on to sort of cement it in a lot of people's like positive interpretations of it. It's now kind of commonly viewed as one of their most cohesive albums.
I'd agree with that.
It's a snapshot of, I think, the exhaustion that the band were experiencing, the anger, the resistance to the commodification. And it's definitely a crucial bridge between the pop punk sort of breakthrough stuff and their later commerciality. It was never as beloved as Dookie. It was never as successful as American Idiot. It is a definite cult favourite, and I think it's a very honest album. I think it feels very sincere. It doesn't feel like it's been overworked. It doesn't feel like it's been overproduced. The turnaround time alone, the 15 months at the most insanely busy time of these people's lives, shows that they were really hard at it, you know. So Billy Joe, in terms of his narrative on it, he described the personal turmoil around that time, including his personal hurt at the accusations of selling out, his exhaustion, his own physical and mental exhaustion for touring, and feeling really disconnected from their older community, because the punk community was where they felt at home. And then 18 months later, that community was like, yeah, you don't really belong here anymore. And to him, that, I mean, I'm sure you can imagine it. If you just feel part of a culture, a system in a certain area, and suddenly you're stratospheric, and then you're like, you come home and people are like, yeah, you're not really taken seriously.
I've never been more popular, but nobody that I know cares about me.
Well,
basically,
would that we could, yeah. That influenced the tone of that album, shall we say. The band kind of sees the album not as a misstep, but as a snapshot of them under extreme pressure. Again, you know, a lot of people, including the band, see it as being really honest. They stand by it in that sense. Mike Durnt said it was also a need for them to prove that they still belonged in that community, to try and maybe ingratiate themselves a wee bit back into that community that they come from. So yeah, the record was recorded apparently with a real emphasis on high energy takes. They didn't like redo and overdub. It was just like, get a good take, get a really good, especially vocal take, and then just stick with it. It isn't produced and polished to death, which could have been something they did on the back of Dookie. And I think, again, as I mentioned earlier in the first episode, it has a superb salvo of opening tracks, which I think is the secret to success for any of these kind of albums, is really like nailing people to the wall with the opening gambit of any record. And I would say like Armitage Shanks, Brat and Stuck With Me on this album are such a brilliant, simple, and this is a word that I would use for Green Day, really simple, effective way to introduce this new album. There was no like Smells Like Teen Spirit. There was no like, you know, big, oh, this is our set piece, this is our big single. It was just like 3 rapid fire, very tuneful, very energetic, very rocky tracks straight out the gate.
Dad, don't look so hot, they say, so get it over the hill. Then let's close it in and catch it up as far as I can tell. Get up and
I think there's also like a deceptive joyousness in this album, because the lyrics don't necessarily marry, as I mentioned, with the tone of the music, you know. And the vocal melodies in particular, like Armitage Shanks, they swing upwards and sound really happy. Like he takes some vocal flights that I think are really, not a lot of their peers did that.
It's the whole 60s sort of doo-woppy thing that they've always really liked. It gives them a distinct vocal quality, which
in the
particularly
first three
backing
songs.
vocals, which a lot
There's
of
no
people
Smells Like Teen Spirit at the beginning of the Duke either.
No, that's true.
And it's not. There's not. So it sounds. It's just like, it sounds to me like there are other three records.
Exactly.
And it's the record, but it's the record you would maybe make. I've not got a lot of time because I have to write these songs at soundcheck. All right, we'll better make it fast. And the lyrics, I think the counterpoint is that, you know, their vocals are always really happy, but the lyrics are a bit dark. But there's nothing wrong with that. Like, American Idiot is quite upbeat, but it's saying a thing that you maybe want to hear. But would it be better if he sounded like hot water music? Would it be taken more seriously?
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't. They'd just be like, oh, what's he shouting at?
Aye, totally.
So it's I think they're very smart.
There's a Trojan horse
They're
element.
smart in their like the melodicness of the vocals, but the melodicness of the vocals comes from Husker Du, who are very melodic.
Yeah.
The Clash are melodic, but they were still saying things, and people like London Calling. Everybody, London Calling's really a fucking miserable song.
It's a miserable song, yeah.
But everybody's like, brilliant, you know, Holiday in the Sun by the Sex Pistols. Catchy. I don't know what holiday it's like. Subject matter grim. You know, The Damned, New Rose, like grim. You know, like, you know, there's like
I totally agree.
And I think that element of it, I don't think that changed between Dookie. The only thing is it just got a bit more famous, and Insomniac just sounds
2
like
points that I don't want to let slide there. I think there's a Trojan horse element there that's nice, where you can slip in more thought-provoking messages, you know, with that spoonful of sugar, having the upbeat music, but having that sort of slightly darker message. Certainly with American Idiot, that's more apparent. But secondly, I totally agree with Rick there. The fact that Dookie, and I think that's actually maybe exhibit A or B, let's say, that Dookie doesn't have a Smells Like Teen Spirit at the start of it. The big singles don't start until the middle of the album, and that shows the lack of intent, I think. Like, they weren't expecting it to become a massive record. I mean, we can all name records that shoot their bolt with their best tunes and like the first one or two tracks, even like Nevermind, Smells Like Teen Spirit right up front, because they were like, that's going to be the generational anthem, right? But like,
American Idiot.
Dookie doesn't. Dookie doesn't have that. Dookie is like burying its hits. In fact, I'm sure they all had to debate which singles would even be singles when you consider some of the tracks that are on that. And so the fact that they were able to like do that and still succeed with it, I think shows a sincerity. And I totally agree. I think this is consistent with that. The single doesn't come in until number 4, Geek Stink Breath. As I said, first single I got from, this came out before the album. It's a single that I went out, I was buzzing when this dropped, because I got into Dookie mid-fervour of Dookie, right? So this was the first time I'd had a chance to come in at the ground floor, and, you know, bearing in mind that had never happened to me, because obviously Nirvana, huge fan, but I got into Nirvana in the weeks following him committing suicide, so like nothing else had got me quite as switched on to alternative music as these two bands.
you love a good death.
Yeah, I
That's
do.
what brings you towards music. A good death.
Just full disclosure here, apart from maybe Oasis and Bush, let's not revisit how their sophomore efforts phased me. But I do think the fact that Geek Stink Breath comes in the 4th track, and that was a single, and it's not at that a particularly obvious big hit single. I mean, I think if you went pound for pound, there's probably multiple songs in Dookie that would be better singles than Geek Stink Breath on this. Yeah. As much as I like it, it's not an obvious single.
It's also about your teeth rotting for having too much speed.
Brilliant.
Nice.
So, like, you know, the singles, like, everybody's like, it's about having rotten teeth for taking too much speed.
If you listen,
subversive.
If you listen closely to the record, you'll be able to hear that this has got different production from the rest of the songs. Like you said,
you can hear that it's been single mixed.
All the singles have been single mixed.
I think Brain Stew as well. Yeah, you can really
and
hear it in Brain Stew.
Because Jaded is the same song almost, basically. But I kind of broadly agree. You know, I think it's a really strong opening salvo for the record. I like Artemis Shanks. I think it's a great song. I think
Armitage Shanks, by the way, name of a toilet manufacturer.
It is, I think Stuck With Me is also really good too. You know,
it's a great song.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to praise the bass work at the start. Stuck With Me. It's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm not part of your LA, I'm just alright. Glad structures waving colors.
He's really good. Like Rick said, he's a fucking...
He's brilliant.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
He's a beast.
I think genuinely, see, when it comes to evocativeness, right, so Stuck With Me, Brat and Armitage Shanks take me back to a place as much as any of Green Day's big singles. Listening to those 3 tracks puts me in that mind of being 14, 15, 16, as much as any sort of like, you know, Basket Case or anything like that, which have been played to death. Those songs make me feel that age again, and it's really nice. They still have that in them.
I know you were saying earlier on that they wanted to get takes quite quickly, but Billy Joe's also said that they wanted to get the perfect sound for the record. So for me, this record sounds tighter and a lot more produced than Dookie did.
They were touring, and the pre-production time was put in, but in terms of the actual takes, the takes were like, that is a good take, let's move on.
But production, I actually think it sounds probably sonically a bit more compressed than Dookie does.
Maybe, yeah. It's thicker.
It's definitely thicker, yeah, and it does sound sonically darker as well. Like tone-wise, it is darker than Dookie, I think, which might have been a stylistic choice as well, because Dookie's got a very distinctive sound. Obviously, Billy Joe's got his own.
Yeah, but it's
not obvious, but Billy Joe does have his own, or did have his own Dookie pedal, which came out a few years ago, just for the distortion tone on the record. It's also, his Marshall amps have got a mod, which is called the Dookie mod, which is done specifically for...
Oh, wow.
I think the amps he got whilst he was playing Dookie were modded this way for some reason. And it turns out that
they may have like master volumes or something like that.
That's it, yeah. That's pretty much it.
So they'll have like, so you can, Marshalls do like the master.
The GS800, isn't it? The
GCM 800s are kind of, that's like your Slayer head, but you get like a master volume means they're usually in the back, or they'll maybe do it, or you could jump, they'll have 4 inputs, you could jump the inputs, but a master volume means you can crank your amp up, but you can turn the volume so you can still play it. So you can push the tubes. And then, so you could have like, they get that tube thing without having to turn everything up to 10, because your master volume's at the back, and you can get it to kind of stage kind of volume. Although I may be explaining, you play the guitar, I'm explaining it like
that makes sense. Like, but that's a mod you need to get done to your amp. So that's why MXR made the Dookie pedal, which is really limited edition now, to kind of replicate that.
And I think there was a thing with the bass sound as well, like the head. I'm sure, I don't know if it was them or they were listening to another. Is it Rob Cavallo who produced it?
Rob Cavallo.
It's an album he did, and like, what's that bass
Caballo,
sound? What's that bass sound? I want that. So that's why the bass is maybe a bit more than the other two.
But that might be. I don't know if that's. You're probably right.
It might be. I remember, or somebody like that was like, I want. What's the bass tone for that? Can we have that kind of thing?
I also know that just getting geeky as fuck now. Mike Dirnt's sound for his Gibson Grabber basses were like Bartoli pickups, which were replacements, which is really a really odd pickup to have in the kind of band that they're in, and that's what gives that kind of sounds like a P bass, but it's not. It's
and the pickup selector doesn't work. Yeah, he's kind of got a fucked bass. And it's Billy Joe's that blue guitar.
There's a name for it. I can't.
Is it like a Super Strat or something like that?
I think it's a custom built, not custom built, but he built it or somebody built it for him. But
all that kind of stuff.
We're deep in the weeds.
It's a very unique sounding. They're a very unique sounding band. Of that,
absolutely. Time,
they've
got a distinctive
They don't just have like off the fucking shelf out the shop gear.
So talking about the sound of Dookie as well, I think the track 86 on this could have been on Dookie. I think it really sounds like something that if it wasn't a demo from that album, it was written from the same place as that. It's pure, it's direct, it's quite joyful.
You'll never find it now. It's buried deep with your identity. So stand aside and let the next one pass.
And one of the things that made me realise is that I maintain that even though there's a lot of bands that were doing something quite similar at the time and after, there's something unique about Green Day's melodic sensibilities that spoke to me in ways that the likes of NoFX et al. Never did. I think they make melodic decisions, especially with the vocal melodies and some of the root changes.
It's 70s power pop, man.
Yeah.
60s, 70s power pop.
But a lot of people tried it, but they just had a sensibility that seemed to really connect to me. And so when I meet people that are like massive NoFX fans, I'm like, I just don't get it. It doesn't push the buttons in the same way.
I think NoFX have a very specific SoCal punk like sound that comes from like the 80s era of like punk rock music, whereas Green Day don't have that.
They're a bit more 70s.
Yeah, very much so.
Like even if thinking about it, Blondie, like that kind of Rosillos, that
totally,
kind of that kind of where punk music is a bit more pop. And then you maybe have like, I say like the Nerves or even like Joe Jackson and all that kind of stuff when it comes from there, I would say.
You were talking earlier on about your own approach to bass playing. So your own like speed picking, like the speed of some of the playing in pop punk. I think Panic Song is a really, really interesting tune in the way that...
Mick wrote the lyrics for that song.
Did he? So see that bass tension that they build up through the speed picking.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
It's
16ths.
It bolsters the payoff in the ending, and I think it's a brilliant break in the proceedings of this album as well, because how in the middle of an album like this do you put a lull other than putting like a time of your life, right? They're not at that stage yet, right? But they put a lull in a different way by building tension, by having that bass line. And the album isn't as dynamic as Dookie, but it does a good job of mixing things up in that way to minimise the fatigue.
See, that song in particular, I think that when it gets kind of going and the whole band are in, it's got a real rock feel, which does portend the future
What's coming
of
now.
Green Day. There's definitely shades of like, oh shit, we can also kind of do this and still sound like us. That's interesting. How about we can,
that's true,
play with that.
I think Brain Stew as well at number 10, or Brain Stew and Jaded, are another great example of them managing to put a lull in the album without really slowing the album down.
Face is numb, fucked up and spun out in my room. On my own, here we go.
I get that the production's slightly different, right? Somebody obviously clicked that was a very hooky song and got them to do a radio production on it. But Brain Stew has so much space in it that it gives the album a breather without tripping it up. And then obviously Jaded maximises on the payoff from that tension, a bit like with the End of Panic song. The only other one or the only other two really that jump out to me is the track Westbound Sign in this one, which is potentially disposable in the context of the album. The thing about it that I like is that it sounds so much like Kerplunk or even earlier. And it really authentically ties the band to their roots. And the whole point of this album is about trying to regain that credibility. This song sounds to me, you were talking about if, 1039 had been produced properly, how would it have sounded? This is that album produced properly. They sound like an authentic project, As I said, they just happen to have had a Eureka album that blew them up, but this is who they are. The ingredients are the same. And what I thought was interesting was it's very telling of that era, because there's no assistance clearly given here, right? Given the obvious through line stylistically that this song, I think, shows with the early material, there's a sense that despite their commercial potential, there were no songwriters drafted in to co-pilot
the songs,
to co-pilot Green Day to another Dookie. Even the way that like bands like Simple Minds and John Bon Jovi and all those fucking guys had at the time, right? Green Day did not have people coming in saying, you guys are worth millions and millions, we've brought this person in to help you write another hit. There was none of that. And I doubt that could be said of many equivalents, not just since, but then as well. A lot of those bands that realised they'd hit on gold and had potential, multi-million-dollar potential, were getting people in to help them reproduce that. There was so much at stake for these bands that the labels had said, you can't squander this opportunity, we'll bring somebody else in. And that, when you talk about bands like Good Charlotte and that, oh my God, there's so many producers involved in that kind of stuff. Sum 41 to try and rebottle the lightning that made them all that money. And actually, in a weird way, it made me wonder. I wonder if Green Day represent a missed opportunity to a lot of those executives who were like, oh, we let that band write the follow-up to their big hit album and it was a quarter or a fifth as successful. We won't do that again. I wonder if they're a cautionary tale for what happens when you let a surprise hit band write their subsequent release, and it's like, no, see when that happens in future, let's bring a writer in or a producer in to help sort of make that stuff a bit more commercially viable.
I don't think that wouldn't have been happening in that period unless you were a huge
I think
band.
that was already happening to some extent. It was nascent, and I think that very much became the norm after that. When you had a surprise hit band, I mean, today it is de facto.
Yeah.
Any band that does well, they're too big to fail. There's too little money in the system. It's like, right, we need to capitalise upon this, bring in a producer, and that producer is not just producing, they're helping that band write the songs, and they're taking feedback, and they're being like, right, this has to change. And often to the extent where it's unrecognisable. Celebrity Skin by Hole is a famous example of an album that was not allowed to be anything less than supremely commercial because there was so much potential money at stake. You know, to the point where they took Patty Schemler's drums completely off the fucking album when she wasn't there and completely recorded a new drummer to make sure that it became like a huge pop hit.
For me, and you might think the same because we're in the same thing, let's use the term the Big Four.
The Big Four.
NoFX, Green Day, Rancid, and The Offspring.
Yeah.
Rancid and Green Day's third album, huge. Rancid's fourth album, Life Won't Wait,
Yeah.
Green Day's fourth album, Offspring's fourth album, ooh.
Yeah.
Blink-182's fourth album, ooh. NoFX as well. Like, what's their third album? White Trash, Two Heaves and a Bean.
Yeah.
Look, I want to throw a stick in the spokes here, right?
You want to throw a spoke in the stick?
Spoke in the wheels. Right?
Spoke in the
That's
stick, the
actually
straw
useful.
man.
I think Blink-182 and Offspring were exactly the kind of bands that would consent to having somebody come in as a producer from the label to sit and turn what was going to be the next album into something special new. Now, by the way, Ixnay, not all that big.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
a bit, Ixnay was a little bit of an Insomniac, but what followed, Americana, was the really, really big one. And what I'm saying about the cautionary tale, I do think there's an element of the label saying, by the way, we let those guys just go for it alone. They didn't reproduce. Yeah, okay, the band still write the body of the work, but we need to bring a producer. And by the way, this has happened in recent Scottish history with a lot of Scottish kind of credible indie alternative electronic bands where, all right, the sophomore effort didn't quite land. Let's bring in a producer and have them sit there and just completely excavate all these songs until they're optimized for commercial success. And hey, it works. And I honestly don't. I don't think Green Day had that on this
That's
album.
what a producer's job is, though.
So I can.
Yeah, but there's producers and there's producers. There's producers that come in to help mix and make the album sound the way the band want it, and there's producers that come in and wholesale chop and hack things apart because their contract gives them very little say in it, and those albums end up sounding the way the label wants them, not the way the band intended them.
I definitely disagree with Blink-182, weirdly, because
I think they are the template of a pop band.
here's how I think you're wrong, because Travis Barker and Mark Hoppus are now like de facto producers for pop punk music and have been for the past 15 years.
Doesn't mean anything, man. People change.
No, like just because like they've got a good ear for a drummer.
Yeah.
They've got a good ear for a tune.
So they sat in the studio and watched the guy work his magic with their music and were like, wow, taking notes, I'm going to do that when I'm older. That doesn't seem inconsistent at all.
I don't think so. Like, I think...
You're not telling me the Offspring wrote Americana.
Yeah,
Seriously?
totally. Like,
no fucking
Dexter,
way.
Dexter Holland is, like, credit-wise, he's the sole songwriter
No
for
way,
all...
man. No.
Literally all of their stuff.
So naive.
Well, there is no proof otherwise. Literally.
No, you're right. It's speculative, but
The songwriting credits, like, and all Offspring music, which is the thing that blows my mind the most about them, is the fact that it's all written by one person.
No fucking way. I'm sorry. It's just there is no fucking way that the Offspring unescorted got to Americana. That was absolutely completely driven by the label. In the same way Celebrity Skin was steered and manipulated.
There is no, like, you've made some extraordinary claims, man. There's no evidence to back those things up.
Rick knows.
There just is not.
No,
What's the word on the street?
I don't think I've ever heard Americana, so I don't know.
Right, okay. You've heard Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Aye.
Why don't you get a job? The song Americana. It's a good record, man. But like,
in the history of Offspring, that's songs I would expect them to write.
I think,
I think they have a sense of a hook, and I think they know how to write. It's not a novelty
Absolutely.
song, but they know how to
know how to write a novelty.
They know how to write a novelty song, but it's not novelty. Is about like Blink-182. As far as those bands go, as musicians, they're the worst.
Yeah, Travis Barker's an incredible drummer,
but then he's too good.
He's better.
He's like he overplays. Musically, they're not the type. Say what you want about NoFX. Like, Fat Mate, I've seen them live. They're really boring. Like, my Fat Mate just talked.
That's kind of the thing in it.
It's like just
hear me out.
But musically, like, all these bands are they can write a song. They can. I don't necessarily think that. Maybe later down the line. And I think to say that, like, oh, you shouldn't have a producer.
I didn't say that.
Or just like somebody coming in to help you guide your songs. Maybe after starting a band at 16 and you get to do, because like, I'm stuck, I'm doing the same thing. I need somebody to help me get better at anything, you know?
See, I don't know, like...
But I don't know, I've never heard of... I don't think there's been like a Diane Warren or, you know, like...
we could seriously go off in some mad directions here. All I'm saying is there's evidence here that a band with incredible commercial potential and I'm not trying to get fucking pure QAnon here, right? But a band with incredible commercial potential.
Do you want to borrow my beanie? That's no lined with tinfoil, but you know.
Coat it in tinfoil, yeah. Were allowed to make the follow-up album and it didn't deliver what the label needed. Now, I would say there's examples to the contrary of that, and I think actually what we're talking about is an era when this became the norm, when it became the norm to draft people in to initially supplement the writing of the band. I'm not saying the band weren't writing the songs outright, I'm just saying that what became the norm was for the producer to take that, to start hacking it to bits and start turning it into things. Sometimes the bands were on board with that, sometimes the bands weren't on board with that. We usually hear about the ones where they weren't because the band speaks out about it. We don't necessarily hear about the ones that were, because contractually there's generally or often not a songwriting credit there to try and give the impression that that was organic. But that is a paid for service, and that's why major labels are there overseeing those projects, because it's the difference between 1 million sales and 25 million sales, and that is not something that is left to chance. That is a huge amount of money, and that is actually just competent business if that is your business to do that, right? That's all I'm saying. This album was absolutely, as far as I can tell, not steered by any producer other than somebody stepping in and remixing those singles, which, by the way, happened with Nirvana as well, with In Utero. Where
Yeah, of course, that's a thing, like, you know.
They remixed the singles to make them a bit more radio-friendly and a bit more, you know, slick. That is normal, but this is what paved the way for the Good Charlottes, where you had...
I feel bad for Good Charlotte. I don't actually.
No, I mean,
I've never really listened. I feel bad that they have now become.
They are a good example.
They've become
though.
the shitty stick.
No, they are a good example, because there you have a genuine band that were so under the control of production teams that they don't really sound like a
I feel
real
bad.
band
I feel I should
anymore.
defend them. Like, they're handsome young twins. They're marketable straight away.
I think there's probably also part of it as well from maybe when they came up. It's like, oh, that's just what they want. That's just what it sounds like to them.
No.
So that's what they go for. Like,
They didn't have that vocabulary. The producer is the one with that the vocabulary.
the reason I say that is because there's a lot of bands now who are like smaller who are definitely going for that like massive commercial vision, like sonically, you know, and they're spending money working.
That's because of what they grew up listening to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think Good Charlotte's a good example of the same thing. Like, they're probably grown up listening to like bands like Blink-182 and all that.
No, they were
and
too early in that process, man. They are part of the first generation of produced.
they can't. Hang on a sec. No, that doesn't make
You've
sense.
literally just agreed with what he said there.
No,
Yes, you did.
the bands now are emulating a sound that Good Charlotte were part of creating.
What I'm saying is, like, so your contention is that bands like The Offspring and Blink-182 were heavily produced, right?
After a point.
Yeah, which is, if it's Americana, that's 1998, right? So
Yeah.
Good Charlotte come out in like 2002, so they've grown up listening to the
Americana.
overproduced
No,
stuff.
but
you know?
they've not
like,
grown up. I mean,
Well, they have.
No,
They
I mean,
have, yeah,
they started recording their album like 2 years after that album came out. My point is just that the industry normalised production after a certain point of success. When a project was flagged for potential real commercial success, either because of previous sales or because of just the way the market was trending on a certain handsome pair of twins or a handsome girl in a pop band or whatever it was, when that was identified, the labels were like, right, we need to maximise the success of this. This will not be left to the artist because it's too big to fail as a potential earner, and the producers are drafted in. But that is absolutely the norm in a lot of projects.
Yeah,
and I think we're naive to think that's not the case in the case of pop punk, which is a commercial venture.
But I also think you're discounting the fact that there are people that may actually just be quite good at it.
Of course, but we can be...
And most folk aren't, right? So the bands we're talking about are definitely the outliers. Like,
you telling me I'm
most
cynical?
folk are not. Yeah, pretty much.
Rick,
yeah.
you're going to let them talk to me like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, there's one more song in this album. It's called Walking Contradiction. It's a really good song.
Really good song.
It should have been earlier in the album because it's a fucking banger.
As a banger.
And there you go. But as it is, the album ends well.
I
Right,
like
guys.
it.
Yeah. So let's go back for a sec. Brain Stew and Jaded, right? I think Brain Stew, you were saying it works really well because it's like a pacer almost.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's also something they've never done before. It sounds really quite sonically different from anything they've done in the past.
It's production based as well because they have hard gates in the guitar.
I hate that about it. It just sounds, when the whole band come in, it's great.
That's a studio technique.
I know. I've utilised it myself.
Of course.
But I just wish there was more space.
Yeah,
just a little bit more space.
Natural decay.
But other than that, like, it is probably my favourite Green Day song, or definitely my top 5, I would say, and one of the best Green Day songs in my opinion.
Interesting.
I like Babs Uvala Who.
That is a fucking great song.
I got a knife for fucking
It is also a very good song.
Right,
yeah.
so
It's a good record.
Do
man.
we agree that this is potentially unsung in their canon in terms of what it represents, or do we think there's something more unsung?
I think I'm going to sit in the middle because I think Kerplunk is just runs it so close.
Yeah.
You know, but I'd be happy with either, honestly.
I think it's the snob's choice. What's your favourite Green Day
This
album?
is.
Yeah.
I thought Kerplunk was the snob's choice.
Nah. I think this would, like, Kerplunk's that's cool. But I think if you say to somebody, what's your favourite Green Day album? I'll really like Dookie. Had Insomniac. So
That's what you would say, right? It's
Yeah,
like-
you would say like, okay, what's your favourite Kiss album? Oh, I like Destroyer. You ever heard The Elder? Because that's where, that's where, I have said that. Like, it's that kind of.
Oh, you'll get it. You'll get it.
You'll get it. I think you should listen to that. I think you'll find it's just it's not the go-to.
Have you ever heard Crazy Nights is the answer?
Yeah, it's all right.
It's fucking amazing. But Turn On the Night is the best song,
Well, if you're going
most unsung song in the world.
If you're going to talk about bands who bring in singers to help them make albums, there's your prime example.
Exactly.
You're a big fan of Creatures of the Night as well, though, right?
Oh, Creatures of the Night's a fucking banger.
Yeah, it's all right, yeah.
Shut
But
up.
I mean, Crazy Nights is absolutely fucking tremendous.
It's not as good as Creatures of the Night.
Anyway, right.
We'll not start talking about Kiss.
My opinions on Kiss are on the record.
That's all right.
I think I've made it clear that I think Kerplunk, had Green Day not turned into Green Day, Kerplunk would be one of those. No, you know what I mean.
I think
know
what we've
what you
established
mean.
is that you don't like fun.
Yeah.
You don't like fun records where people get to sing happy songs. You would rather American Idiot, I don't know, sounded like fucking Drain You, and Billy Joe blew his arse off and they all did heroin. That's he shot his tragic arse shooting accident. He now runs a fucking charity for those of the arseless of America.
The
And he's like,
arseless child.
the tragic tale of Billy Joe.
Colostomy core.
Like fucking Steve Albini produced American Idiot, and it just has.
That would have been
sounds like every other fucking shitey record they produced. Sorry.
I mean, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Marks on the fence. But,
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm on the fence, but in a good way. Like, I think Punk's also class. Like, I think that period, like, that's a 3-album banging fucking run. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty untouchable.
we could have gone for Nimrod and just like that would have been the compromise.
But yeah, I mean,
No,
that's-
the father of all mothers is the compromise.
By the way, Mark, you're fucking bang wrong there.
Well, I've been known to be wrong sometimes.
I'll be honest, that, like, I'm never going to
I'm
listen.
not wrong.
I'm never going to listen to it.
Yeah,
again.
neither you're going to listen to it again. Like,
No,
what
by the way,
conversation we
I'm
had?
going to go out and listen to it to spite you.
I hope you do.
He
I
will.
hope you do.
He's
and I
gonna-
hope you realise I'm right.
That's it. Like, he's going to listen to so much that his next musical project will sound like the father of all mothers, and we'll have to get a producer in.
Anti-Second Amendment.
Then he'll
Eagles of Death Metal.
Then he'll blow his arse off.
It's a song about guns.
But I won't be able to blow my arse off because I'm anti-Second Amendment.
Yeah.
So
No, you
I'll
need-
have to cut my arse off.
You need to-
Grate it.
It needs,
Great my
jeez.
arse.
It needs to be a record about guns. That's what it's got to be about.
Yeah.
This is.
I think you should write a pro-gun record, Chris.
This podcast has lost all form. Right?
Sorry, I
The second part is over 2 hours long. So we're having.
But see,
I have that effect on everything I touch.
Anybody that got this far is going to be like, Jesus, this is like a Christmas episode.
It's become like a bit like that, man.
Yeah,
So,
I think you need to write a pro-gun record, Chris. I want to hear that.
a pro gun. Okay.
Pro-gun.
Okay,
Do it under an assumed name.
there's a challenge.
There's a challenge.
See how much money you make.
It'll probably be more than
Exactly.
currently.
Pro-gun.
Right, I'll see you there. Will you be in it?
Pro gun.
Okay, aye, I'll be in it.
Right, okay, Mark.
What would be
I'll
called?
be on it.
There you
Why
go,
not?
folks.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes peeled.
Would it be called Dead But American?
By the
Dead
way,
and American.
you know that I only got through customs in America by convincing them that Dead or American was like a pure rah-rah pro-American
Yeah.
statement.
I'd rather be dead or American.
I was like, yeah, everybody will be Dead or American, yeah. And they were like,
Did you say it in that voice?
damn right, brother.
Like a Hanna-Barbera
Here you go.
like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon mouse. Let this guy in.
They can't hear that. They
Yeah.
can't hear the difference.
Yeah.
You can take more like you. Yeah, I'm not getting into the World Cup this year.
He's fucked it. Right, okay.
But it's cool, neither's Morocco, so we qualify automatically.
Well, this has been a really good episode.
Yeah.
Rick, thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
You had us, yeah. Like we orchestrated a shit show. You just came along.
Yeah, I'm happy to put up with my
You know, it's the club, but I don't know if-
nonsensical ramblings once again.
If listeners can hear the noise that was going on in the background, we've actually made the club upstairs wish that we would tone it down downstairs.
It is 10 to 11, folks. We started at 6:30.
Yeah.
So
I like to point out, I went to my friend's house before this. I've been in Glasgow since 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock this
Rick's
afternoon.
also teetotal, and he managed to do this.
With an omelette, a couple of sandwiches, a can of sugar-free, and some podcast-friendly
That's
Tic Tacs.
By the way, can I just say that's the size of Tic Tac? It's like a grab bag size of Tic Tacs.
These are men's Tic Tacs.
men's Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
Tic Tac.
Marketed.
Tic Tacs
These
for
are
men's.
Lynx Tic Tacs.
The Lynx Africa
You can
Tic
do
Tacs.
like an
Lynx Tic Tac
That's what you
review.
need to be. They should be writing about massive boxes of Tic Tacs.
Right, enough. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks.
Chin chin.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.